The queen wishes to set the record straight on Cinderella's folktale. She invites some guests to her castle. She shows them a painting and the glass slipper which belonged to Danielle the Cinder Girl, who is her great-great-grandmother. 8-year-old Danielle is excited to welcome her father back from a trip with his new wife and her 2 daughters. She is pleased to have a bigger family, after being alone with her father for so long. The housekeepers Paulette and Louise try hard to make Danielle presentable, but she chases her friend Gustave around the castle, and they roll in dirt and mud. Her father arrives with his new family, and he is happy to see his daughter, filthy-looking and all. He introduces Danielle to them, but the new wife Baroness Radmilla turns up her nose at Danielle. Later at night, Danielle and her father are a charming duo. He gives her Utopia, a book too advanced for an 8-year-old. They discuss their new family, and he promises to always be her father first, before any other duty. Danielle is unhappy when he informs her that he will be traveling, but she successfully hoodwinks him into reducing his travel to 1 week, and he tucks her into bed. The next morning, as Danielle's father gets ready for his travel, everyone wears a gloomy face, but he assures them that he will be back soon. He also tells Danielle to get to know her sisters better. He ignores the pain in his arm and sets out. Danielle runs closer to see her father keep his tradition of waving at the gate, but she is terrified when he falls off his horse. She screams and runs to him, followed by the others. Her father pats a scared Danielle on the cheek and whispers his love to her, before giving up the ghost. Danielle is inconsolable and hysterical when she realizes her only parent is gone. 10 years later in the palace, the king is furious with his son for refusing to marry the Spanish princess he has arranged for him. The queen tries to placate him, to no avail. They approach the prince's room and notice that he has escaped through his window. He is seen galloping out of the palace on his horse. The king commands his guards to chase him and bring him back to the palace. Danielle is 18 years old and has grown into a lovely young lady. Unfortunately, she is a slave in her late father's house. She is roused from her sleep on the floor by the crowing of a hen. She carries out her menial duties on the farm and finds a thief who just stole her family's horse. She is furious and lays in wait for the thief to cross her path. She throws the apples she has picked at him. He falls to the ground and begs her to stop, but she doesn't. When the thief removes the shawl covering his face, Danielle is surprised to see that she has assaulted the prince. She begs him for forgiveness, and he asks for her silence, and showers her with some coins for her troubles. In the next scene, the Baroness is having breakfast with her daughters. Marguerite throws a tantrum, and acts rudely towards their aged housekeeper. Her sister Jacqueline, who is better behaved, tries to correct her, but her attempts are unsuccessful. The Baroness advises Marguerite to work on her resonance. She has hopes of her daughter snagging the prince, even though a Spanish princess is billed to become his wife. She complains about the lack of salt on the table, and calls for Danielle in a sing-song voice, which irritates Jacqueline. Danielle enters the kitchen in great haste with apples from the field. She shows the housekeepers, who have raised her from childhood, the money the prince gave her. Danielle promises them that she would use it to bail Maurice, who the Baroness sold to pay for her taxes. When the Baroness calls out for her again, she responds and takes their food to them. Jacqueline is courteous to her and responds to her greeting, while Marguerite taunts her. She says that she smells like a pig. The Baroness accuses Danielle of constantly looking crude and unkempt, despite all her attempts. Danielle is sorry and pleads to her stepmother, if Maurice is brought back to the house, she would improve. She is furious at Danielle. She accuses her of being ungrateful, and warns Danielle never to mention any servants returning to the house. Prince Henry comes across a group of people ambushed by armed robbers, who pilfer their valuables. An old man begs him to chase after the thief who took his precious painting. He is hesitant because the king's guards are approaching, and are likely to catch up with him. But he pities the man. He gives the thief a hot pursuit through the thick forest, which leads them into the river. Baroness Radmilla and her daughters are purchasing jewelry. She opts for a broch that is gaudy and able to draw attention to Marguerite, while Jacqueline stands at a corner with disinterest. Danielle has made plans to rescue Maurice. She plans to go to the auction house and pay for his release. Her friend Gustave is weary of this plan. As he helps her prepare, he is worried that she would be caught, but she assures him that she will succeed. The prince returns to the scene of the robbery and finds that the king's guards are there. He returns the painting to the old man. To the princess's delight, the old man is the famous painter, Da Vinci, who has been invited by the king. The prince pleads with him to have a word with the king on his behalf and dissuade him from forcing him into an arranged marriage. They make a stop at Danielle's house to return the horse he stole earlier. The prince describes Danielle to the Baroness, but she feigns ignorance and introduces her squabbling daughters to him. They struggle hard to get his attention, and it warms Marguerite when the prince comments on her gaudy broch. When the Baroness broaches the topic of the prince's impending marriage, he gives her a non-committal response and departs from her home. In the next scene, Danielle is at the auction place to rescue Maurice, but she is affronted when the man in charge refuses to release him. They get into an argument, and she makes a case for the servants, which draws a crowd. When he shouts at her, the prince arrives and stops him. He berates the man for raising his voice at a woman, and is impressed by her critique on slavery. He orders the release of Maurice. Danielle is happy and thanks him. The prince does not remember where he met her. She gives him her late mother's name, upon his insistence to know her name, and she disappears when the prince's attention is divided. She returns home with Morris, and the two housekeepers are excited to be reunited with him. Danielle is happy to have brought back joy to their hearts again. Back at the palace, the king is furious with his son for playing a disappearing act. The prince is fed up with the king's smothering and insistence on him marrying a complete stranger. When the queen reminds him of his obligations as a royal, he retorts that marriage to a complete stranger never made anyone in the room happy, alluding to his parents' unhappy marriage. And when his father threatens to deny him the crown if he fails to marry the princess, the prince is agreeable and blankly tells him that he does not want the crown. This leaves the king flustered and in a blubbering mess. In the de Ghent household, the Baroness is cross at Danielle. She accuses her of embarrassing the family before the prince. She is happy that her Marguerite saved the day by finding favor before the prince. The Baroness is surprised to see Morris. He fibs that he has worked off his debts and was permitted to leave, and she asks him to carry on with other menial jobs. The prince is on a quest to find his mystery girl. On a walk with his mother, he inquires from her if she knows Danielle, by using the name she gave him, Countess Nicole. But the queen informs him that there are many people who bear such a name. Their bonding time is interrupted by the king. He has decided to reach a compromise with his son and allow him to choose his wife based on love. He informs them of his decision to throw a masked ball, but if at the stroke of midnight he doesn't announce his choice, the king himself will make a formal announcement himself. The prince is surprised at the king's decision, more so when the king tells him that he will take care of any fallout with Spain. His mother advises him to be careful in his choice, as divorce is only allowed in England, and not in France. The news of the ball gets to Baroness de Ghent the next day. She is full of ideas when the servant from the palace informs her that the prince is to get a bride before the night of the ball. She hands over some money to him, and with the promise of a romantic arrangement between them when her Marguerite becomes queen, the servant gives her information of the prince's movements. Danielle and the housekeeper are hard at work. She regrets giving her mother's name to the prince, who she believes is insufferable. The housekeeper feels it is because he is royalty. Danielle wishes the prince and her stepsister Marguerite to be together, since they are such a perfect match, but the housekeeper does not agree. The de Ghent girls and their mother are busy searching for the appropriate dresses for the ball, and Marguerite becomes frustrated when she does not find any suitable gown. The Baroness has an idea and shows them a box containing Danielle's dowry, a shimmery ivory-colored dress. The girls ooh and ah at the perfect dress and slippers. Marguerite laughs at the idea of Danielle wearing the beautiful dress to marry a chimney sweep. Well-mannered Jacqueline points out that Danielle is also a de Ghent lady and ought to attend the ball, but her mother and sister are of a dissenting opinion. Danielle is surprised to see them fitting her dress, and the Baroness lies that they are airing out her dress for the ball. Jacqueline is surprised at her mother's lie and tries to query her, but Marguerite speaks over her. In a fit of anger at their lies, she storms out of the room. The Baroness assures Danielle that they will all go to the ball as a happy family, on the condition that she does all her chores and is on her best behavior. The prince is troubled about the ultimatum his father has given him, and queries the idea of finding a perfect mate. They are both at the riverside, where Da Vinci tries out an experiment. He assures the prince of the possibility of finding the perfect wife. He just needs to pay attention. Da Vinci finds it funny that the prince is really worried, as his musings on the subject intensify. After a hard day of work around the same river, Danielle goes to wash off and swim a bit, but she is frightened by Da Vinci. Her scream attracts the prince, and they are both surprised to see each other. The prince is intrigued with her, and even though they have different beliefs regarding the treatment of servants, they have fun arguing, while Da Vinci watches them with interest. Their bonding time is cut short when they hear voices. Danielle runs away, so as not to get caught with the prince. She leaves the prince, who finds it amusing that she keeps running away each time they meet. The de Ghent household is filled with drama as usual. While the issue of stolen candlesticks is being discussed, the Baroness threatens to ship the housekeepers away to the Americas. She is corrected by Jacqueline, who informs her that a decree has been made, banning the sale of servants. The Baroness scoffs at the idea, while Danielle is happy at being the catalyst for the change. Marguerite vows to find out who her competition is. She's heard about the Countess, who the prince is currently enamored with. The palace teems with a crowd of young women and their mothers. They are watching the prince play tennis. He is irritated when they surround him like a moth to a flame, and stuff his shirt with handkerchiefs. He is surprised when he sees the ever-delectable Marguerite, who exudes sensuality and tries to ensnare the prince, based on her mother's instructions. Danielle is accosted at the market by a mean-spirited fellow. He threatens to take over her little farm if she fails to agree to his marriage proposition, even though he is twice her age. Her housekeepers try to defend her, but they are no match for the man, who seems to wield power and wealth in their town. They are angry at his threats, but Danielle is not perturbed by them. The prince traipses around the market with Marguerite and his entourage by his side. She tries hard to get closer to the prince and cajoles him to feed her some chocolates, but the prince looks uncomfortable with it. She steers him to her family's stall, where Danielle and the housekeepers are selling their stock. They see the prince, and Danielle flings the chickens in her hands at him. She runs away so that the prince will not recognize her. The Baroness is furious at their misconduct, but the housekeepers claim that they were startled by the prince's arrival. He recovers himself, but is confused when there is no sight of his mystery girl, who he thought he saw. At home, the Baroness is giddy with excitement at the prospect of her Marguerite marrying the prince. She shares a candid moment with Danielle, where she tells her that she is grateful for how hard her mother was on her growing up. She is emotional and clearly misses her husband, when Danielle asks her if she loved her father. While playing with a kite on the field with her friend Gustave, Danielle does not fail to hide her happiness that the prince is marrying her stepsister. She is certain that after the marriage, the Baroness will stay in the palace, while she takes care of her father's house. Their time together is ruined when they see the prince coming. She hides behind a shrub while Gustave meets with him. The prince asks of the whereabouts of Da Vinci, whose kite is in the air, but Gustave declares he has no idea. In a nervous moment, he informs the prince that the kite belongs to Countess Nicole, a friend of the artist. The prince is happy to get a big break, while Danielle is mad at her friend for bringing her up. At the insistence of the prince, Gustave informs him that she stays with her cousin's family, the Baroness de Ghent. The prince commends Gustave's painting and sets out to meet his mystery girl. Danielle comes out of hiding and berates her friend for giving her out to the prince, but Gustave is in the clouds because the prince noticed his painting. He advises her to run along before the prince gets to her house. Danielle follows the path to her house. At home, she beckons on the housekeepers, and they help transform her into a courtier. She meets him at the door, and they decide to spend the day together. The prince dismisses his guards, but unknown to them, the mole planted by the Baroness observes them. The Baroness and her daughters arrive at the church, and she is accosted by the mole, who tells her that the prince is nowhere to be found. He hands the Baroness a parcel containing the Queen's cherished necklace, which he claims will be useful to the Baroness. She is excited to have him working with her, and caresses his face romantically. Prince Henry takes Danielle to the library. She is delighted to be in the midst of so many books, which remind her of her late father. She tells the prince about him, and she becomes emotional. He is somber as he reflects on Danielle's passion and knowledge. After service, Marguerite, at the bequest of the Baroness, approaches the royal family in their coach. She shows them the Queen's jewelry, which she claims fell off. The Queen is pleased with her for returning it. To show her thanks, the Queen invites Marguerite and her mother to chat with her the next day. On their way home, the prince's carriage develops a fault. Danielle gets antsy. It's getting late, and her family might return home before her. She surprises the prince when she suggests they continue on foot, as an adventure. The Baroness is concerned with the whereabouts of the prince. She promises to find out more. Jacqueline is annoyed that Marguerite does everything related to the prince. She complains that soon, she will be relegated to cleaning duties with Danielle. The prince is annoyed that he does not know the way to his castle, while Danielle seems to have her life figured out. She laughs at him from the top of the hill she climbed to figure out their next direction. The prince is suddenly attacked by a band of gypsies bearing dangerous-looking knives. The prince warns her to stay up, while he tries to fight back. Danielle ignores him and climbs down the hill, in pursuit of one of the men who took her dress. But she is overpowered. Henry tells the men to free her and come for him instead. When they do, she orders them to give her a horse and her belongings. The head of the group promises her, on his honor, to allow her take anything she can carry. Danielle is smart. Rather than take a horse, she carries a surprised and heavy Henry. She leaves, followed by hailing and laughter from the men. Meanwhile, in the de Ghent household, the Baroness awaits the arrival of Danielle. It's already dusk. She orders the housekeepers to inform her when she returns back to the house. Prince Henry and Danielle are comfortably settled, as they play games in front of the fire. The prince, in an unguarded moment, bares his soul to her. He does not desire to be king. She is sympathetic, but reminds him of the good his position could bring to the people. Her words endear the prince, and they share a personal moment. It is cut short by laughter from the gypsies. They arrive at her house, and with a promise to meet the next day, they share a sweet moment together before going their ways. Prince Henry brims with ideas after his time spent with Danielle. He rouses his parents from sleep, and informs them of his desire to build a university open to people from all stations. The king is surprised to see his otherwise surly son passionate about a project. Danielle is woken forcefully by the Baroness and her daughters, and they ask about her whereabouts the previous day. She stuns them when she tells them to make breakfast for themselves, as she is still tired. Jacqueline is annoyed when the mantle falls on her while boiling water for breakfast. As a punishment for her attitude, the Baroness prohibits Danielle from attending the palace ball. Danielle is stunned when she finds Marguerite trying on her late mother's dress, which now belongs to her. She berates her stepmother and her daughters for the stunts they are playing for the prince's favor. She completely loses it when Marguerite throws a jab at her late mother. Angry, Danielle hits her and chases her around the house, to beat her some more. In a bid to stop her, Marguerite threatens to throw her favorite book, Utopia, into the fire if Danielle does not hand over the shoes to her. The Baroness also promises her a sound lashing. Danielle is forced to give up her shoes for the last gift from her father, but is heartbroken when Marguerite throws the book into the fire. Anyway, Jacqueline tears up at the sight. She does not support her family's ill treatment towards Danielle. The Baroness fulfills her promise of a beating, and they are evident on Danielle's back. Jacqueline comforts her and tends to the wounds. It's a bright day at the palace. Marguerite and her mother visit the queen, and she spins a story on how she sustained the black eye Danielle gave her. The queen is impressed with her and apologizes for the prince's continued absence. The Baroness' interest is piqued when the queen mentions that the prince returned at dawn from his escapades. The queen asks if they know of any Countess Nicole, who the prince is infatuated with. The Baroness and Marguerite make the connection and reluctantly reply that she is their cousin. Marguerite, in a fit of rage, throws a tantrum. The queen is horrified at her behavior, but Marguerite claims that there was a bee. The Baroness laughs embarrassedly. Danielle meets the prince at their agreed place. She is somber and tries to tell him the truth. He insists she calls him Henry and shows her his secret place in the ruins. He declares his love for her and promises to announce her as his intended bride at the ball. She is filled with guilt for deceiving the prince and finds it difficult to tell him the truth of who she truly is. They share a moment, and she runs away in tears, while the prince calls after her. She arrives home and is accosted by her stepmother in Elizabeth. The Baroness is aware of her foolery with the prince and calls her out on it, but Danielle does not seem perturbed, as she is not afraid of her stepmother anymore. Marguerite is livid. The gown and slippers for the ball are missing, and she accuses Danielle of taking them. Danielle admits to hiding them, alongside the other items that have been missing from the house. She swears never to allow spoilt Marguerite to wear her late mother's dress and slippers. In anger, the Baroness throws her into the store, locks the door, and threatens the servants if they dare set her free. At the palace, it is a somber affair between the prince and his mother, the queen. She informs him that his supposed Countess Nicole is engaged to a Belgian and has traveled for her marriage. The prince finds it hard to believe this, but when he remembers that she had something to tell him but never did, he gets angry that his hopes are shattered. The queen is sympathetic towards him and advises him that any choice he makes is better than Spain. In the next scene, Maurice tries to convince Gustave to inform the prince about the treatment meted out to Danielle. But he is too chicken-hearted to approach the prince or Da Vinci. Maurice encourages him to be brave and save his friend. It's the night of the ball, and the palace is filled with people. Gustave arrives, and through the walls, he hits one of the guards, who is the mole working for the Baroness. He changes into his uniform for easier access to Da Vinci. The Baroness and her daughters are dressed to the nines, and Jacqueline is bickering about her mother's choice of costume for her, as they prepare to leave for the ball. At the palace, Gustave is adorned in a guard's uniform. He mistakes a guest for Da Vinci, and is ecstatic to finally meet his idol. He faints at his feet, and the real Da Vinci helps rouse him up. Gustave tells him about Danielle, and they set out to the de Ghent household. They find the housekeepers trying hard to open the store. Da Vinci quickly picks the lock and the door opens. Danielle is happy to see everybody, but she is sad to have deceived the prince, and does not want to attend the ball anymore. Da Vinci and the housekeepers convince her to attend, and help her get ready. Back at the palace, the prince and the king seem to have come to a truce. The king is proud of his son for his university idea, and informs Henry that he should not be in a hurry to announce who his bride is. But the prince has made up his mind about it. The housekeepers, Gustave, and Da Vinci are excited to see Danielle dressed up and ready for the ball. They watch in admiration as she sets out for the palace in a carriage. The ball is in full swing at the palace with dancing, music, and various displays. At the sound of the horn, the king addresses the crowd, and is on the verge of announcing Prince Henry's engagement, when he is stopped by Henry. Henry has his eyes fixed on Danielle, who has now arrived. She looks resplendent in her mother's dress with matching wings, and he is excited to see her. The crowd makes way for him, as he runs to meet her. The Baroness and Marguerite are furious that Danielle is, once again, the center of attraction. The prince is happy that she is not engaged. She tries to tell him the truth, but he draws her toward his parents. They are stopped by the Baroness, who plans to embarrass Danielle. She drags a wing off Danielle's dress and exposes her lies to the prince. The prince is furious at the Baroness for insulting Danielle, but when she fails to deny the accusations, the prince is heartbroken. Danielle confesses that Nicole was her mother, and that she is a mere servant. The king is angry at the scene caused, and the prince warns her not to call him by his given name, because he is a prince, and she is a servant. Danielle is hurt by his words, so she runs out of the ball. The Baroness is happy that her plan worked. Da Vinci meets Danielle, who is crying at the entrance. He tries to stop her, but she ignores him and runs away, leaving her slipper behind. Da Vinci is furious at the prince for breaking Danielle's heart without listening to her. They exchange angry words, and Da Vinci tells him that he does not deserve Danielle. He drops Danielle's slipper for him and leaves. Danielle is met by the rain on her way home. She is emotional and cries over the bad day she has had. The next morning, while Danielle is hard at work on the farm, the Baroness taunts her about what happened. Danielle is furious at the Baroness for her ill treatment and inquires why she never treats her like her child. The Baroness simply tells her that she is not worthy to be loved. They are interrupted by an overexcited servant, who calls their attention outside. Danielle is surprised that her stepmother sold her father's belongings to buy the clothes she and her daughters wore to the ball. She thanks the businessman for his kindness, but he shocks her when he informs her that the Baroness has exchanged Danielle too. His guards force her into his carriage, amidst her and the housekeeper's protests. It's gloomy as Da Vinci paints Danielle. The next scene is in the royal church. It's Prince Henry's wedding to the Spanish princess. The princess is unhappy with the marriage. She cries noisily from the procession to the wedding ceremony, and Prince Henry and the other people in the church are unsure of her reason for crying. After observing her, Prince Henry bursts into laughter. He removes her veil, and the princess mutters unintelligibly in Spanish. He calms her down and ends her misery by calling off the marriage. The princess is excited and flies into the arms of her lover in the congregation. They share a private moment, and the royal families from both countries are aghast. The Baroness and Marguerite are happy with the latest development. They have another shot at the royal family. The prince leaves the church in search of Danielle, and Maurice informs him that she has been sold. Jacqueline, who follows him from church, gives him the name of the businessman. The prince sets out to rescue Danielle. At the castle, where Danielle is held captive, she acts coldly to her new master and rejects his advances. When he insists on annoying her, she pulls out a sword and disarms him, cutting him in the process. He is forced to hand over the key to her when she threatens to slit his throat. She is surprised to meet the prince and his guards, who have come to rescue her. He apologizes for his behavior and declares her his match, even though she is a slave. Danielle is overjoyed when the prince calls her by name. He helps her wear the missing slipper, and they share a perfect moment. Jacqueline is amused that her mother and sister still have high hopes that the prince will marry Marguerite. They are excited when news comes that the king requests their audience at the palace. They float into the palace with pomp and pageantry, expecting a marriage proposal for Marguerite. She is dumbstruck when the king asks her if she lied to the queen, and Marguerite turns on her mother and accuses her of deceiving her. The royal family finds them guilty and to be shipped to the Americas, but Danielle, who is now the princess, pleads their case. They are taken to the servants' quarters to work as servants. Leonardo da Vinci unveils the portrait he painted. He hands it to Danielle as a wedding gift. She is happy with her gift and surrounded by her now husband, Gustave, Jacqueline, and her servants. They promise to continue their lives happily ever after and share a private moment. The movie ends with the voice of the queen, who is telling the story. She insists that the story of Cinderella and her Prince Charming is not just a fairy tale.